maybe an unintended consequence or maybe an intended consequence of this conflict has been the demilitarization of NATO proper. So, of course, one of Russia's stated aims from the beginning of the special military operation was the demilitarization of Ukraine. But we're finding that all of NATO finds itself demilitarized. And I just want to show you quickly and show the audience quickly what I was speaking about in terms of the, you called it almost like a bipolar characteristic, a tendency. Here you have the Associated Press talking about NATO's new ammunition package as a key artillery and ammunition contract to replenish allied supplies and help Ukraine. Positive, right? $1.2 billion worth of a contract to make tens of thousands of artillery rounds to replenish dwindling stocks of its member countries to aid Ukraine. Now, though, we need to get into Newsweek, how they reported it. And it's a different attitude. NATO chief admits new bullets won't arrive in Ukraine for years. So that 1.1 billion euros or 1.2 billion US dollars, Jens Stoltenberg told reporters at the NATO headquarters in Brussels that it's become a battle of ammunition, but those munitions are not going to get there until initial deliveries made by the end of 2025. So, Andrei, 2025. That sounds like NATO is demilitarized. Could you explain how this happened? What has happened here?
No, it's very simple. Russian general staff is not stupid. They have a really great analytical structures, including economic analysis, and they do economic intelligence. Obviously, it's also, a lot of it is OSINT, open source intelligence. It's readily available through many media. They knew to what degree United States have been deindustrialized. And for example, it's not only about the money. Again, I mean, those dollars and euros, absolutely meaningless numbers. Okay, they reflect nothing. It's all just garbage, basically. What you need to look at is at the supply chains and technological chain. Just to give you example, 155 millimeter shells, they use a lot of, and what is required there is a lot of black powder. Well, guess what? There is only one black powder plant in the United States. People said it's exploded like a couple of years ago. Possible, I'm not saying that it's not true, but it's in Louisiana. And to produce this thing, which is absolutely crucial for 155 or 152 millimeter shells, you need to have this black powder produced, but you need to have like 30 different chemical elements. Well, guess what? Basically, the number of those elements have been supplied to the United States, and guess what? From 3 times. Where from? From Russia. So, and this is just goes across the whole thing. It goes across the issue of the producing high precision weapons. Russia outproduces, in terms of high precision weapons, all NATO combined by probably order of magnitude. So, and the gap is gonna grow even more, not to mention the fact that basically when you looked at the NATO and US weaponry, it is a lagging generation or two behind what Russia produces now and delivers to the front line. So it's indeed the militarization of NATO, but I mean, now when United States squeezing Europe for everything it's got in terms of selling it very expensive energy, and they have no other option. Well, they have option. They try to do it, circumnavigate this whole thing, but they cannot obviously get any more, required volume of Russian cheap energy. In the end, this begins to bear its fruits, so to speak, and they suddenly, always expensive, always ineffective weapons of NATO, they suddenly become, so to say, worth their weight in gold because of the incredibly high prohibitive costs in terms of energy. And of course, you're losing their appropriate, basically, cadre, the working class, so to speak, which was responsible for basically assembling and manufacturing those things. And then, of course, there is another issue of research and development, which was miscalculated strategically on the historical scale. And this is the issue of the missile technologies and air defense technologies. And when you put this together, yeah, I mean, sure, what NATO wants to do, to fight Russia conventionally, good luck, you know.
Yeah. That is, I mean, that kind of sums it up. Why is the United States then using Europe in this way? Because we hear NATO is this grand alliance. You hear Joe Biden saying NATO is stronger than ever, but it's felt like in the last, especially since the end of the failed counteroffensive, it's felt as if the United States has almost exported its woes to Europe. It has, of course, there is no US aid being agreed upon to Ukraine. And yet Europe, the UK in particular, and now France has been pretty active. You mentioned the mercenaries before. What, I mean, the United States is using Europe in this way. How can this go on? How long can this go on? Because it feels like this is not just a temporary fix, but also a fix that is likely to dry up very, very fast.
Well, yeah, and again, as I wrote for many years now, and this is the consensus really. It's not me that I came up with this idea. No, I was just basically agreeing with other people. For example, like Mr. Hudson, Michael Hudson, who is a brain of the incredible scale in modern economics. And it's the fact that Europe is lunch. Okay, Europe is lunch. United States simply ran out of the real economy, and so for United States to survive in any shape or form, if you wish, it's important to first own the European market. And that's what the Build Back Better was all this about. But again, you have to keep in mind that selling Europe the expensive US energy, the United States sells a lot of energy. Some of it they will not see Europeans for a while, but that's another matter altogether. But hey, you know what? Europe has no international subjectivity. They are lapdogs. United States tells Europe jump, they ask how high. And as a result, they have to die eventually. But they have to basically extend the agony of the American economic system, which also is crumbling. So, and when you look at naturally how they deindustrialized each other, it's absolutely astounding. It's historically unprecedented. So they moved pretty much all industry to Asia, and there you go. Now what you have? Oh, you have a lot of financial services. That's about it, And as a result, while the United States wants to sell this energy because the United States does have natural resources, unlike it is the case with the Europe, which is really dependent on pretty much most of it. And when you look at this, that's, United States wants to live and wants to eat. And you cannot blame United States for this. You can blame economic system, which is self-destructive. But obviously, what it is, you die today for me to die tomorrow. This is what is this all about. And Europe is, again, I think so we're going to see the end of Europe much faster than anybody expected. And I'm not just referring because of German farmers and now French, and they all go and, just on strike and all that. It's just the fact that Europe as the civilization, as a culture, have been completely wiped out. And Europeans participated in this crime, So there you go. And as a result, you cannot produce, just think about it. I mean, if you have, for example, if you have any kind of NATO, let's say small arm, which you produce. I mean, I'm basically giving you just the number ratios. It doesn't mean that they are real numbers, but they give you a very real ratio. When you have your single machine gun or, just which is 10 times more expensive than, for example, Russia does the same, how long do you think you're going to last? First, you won't be able to produce it in the required quantities, and then, of course, quality falls, and the whole thing, just the snowball, of the problems begins, and then it turns to the avalanche. And we are observing it today. We are humans. Our lifespan is very short, relative to history. Our attention span is also very short, because we cannot necessarily grasp all the history of even the last 100 years. But in terms of nations, last 50 years, it's not that big of a deal. It's really short term. And what we observe now, I thought collapse of the Soviet Union was a big deal. My gosh, what we're seeing right now is just the start. It's going to get much worse.
Yeah. I mean, and the huge contradiction between Europe and the United States' actual military capacity, what it can do, let's say, against a so-called adversary like Russia, versus what it claims it can do, or how it presents itself and speaks about itself, is so wide now. And I wanted to show, because you have spoken a lot about the fact that the so-called strategic thinkers, the think tankers, the military strategists, so-called, that they are nothing but morons. And so here we have a story. This is the same day as the plane being downed. They're talking about, so this is from Business Insider reporting on, though, and this is important. It says Russia is struggling to breach Ukraine's defenses because its troops keep getting blown up by drones when they gather in groups, says the Institute for the Study of War. So I know you've been following the Institute for the Study of War quite closely, and I know that you talk a lot about their...
I don't follow amateurs, okay? And
I just wanted to show quickly, because they're truly amateurs. You talk a lot about how a lot of the so-called strategists of the United States often are experts in a kind of war, or maybe a particular form of war, or maybe a particular war where the so-called adversary maybe is quite weak, maybe vulnerable. For example, Iraq. Here we have General Keane, who is the chairman of the Institute for the Study of War, and his background. Look, General Keane was in the Pentagon on 9/11, provided oversight and support for the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. Since 2004, General Keane has conducted frequent trips to Iraq and Afghanistan for senior defense officials, with multiple visits during the surge period in both countries. So this is exactly the kind of person that is coming up with these reports within these think tanks that are saying Russia is the one that's in trouble here, completely blinding, it seems, their eyes, or putting the wool over their eyes to the fact that they don't really have the capacity to go toe-to-toe with Russia. So how do you, I guess I'll just kick it to you in terms of your reaction to this.
No, yeah, I get it. It's Institute for Study of War. It's Kagan's operation. It's the Kagan family, the clan, Vicky Nuland's brother-in-law, I believe. He is a brother of her hubby. General Keane would know the military history. He doesn't know. I can tell you for immediately. He doesn't have no clue about the history of the World War II. He doesn't know what strategic planning is on the level such as Russian general staff does, and he wouldn't pass the entrance exams to the Academy of the General Staff in Russia. He would fail academically. So yeah, this is the level of the people who run. Well, they run Pentagon pretty much. They lost every single war they ever fought. So, and yet they are for some reason experts. So what can I say? I mean, listen, I communicate with people in Russia they are also stupefied as me, that these people are, it's like, and we have been, kind of respecting them. It's like, there's nothing to respect that. There's no integrity left. There's no military decorum left. They pretend those things. They confabulate them. Well, as I already stated, basically most of the American 20th century and 21st century military history is confabulated, with the exception of the Pacific War. The rest of it is practically wet fantasies by those people keen, the same as pretty much any of them, Petraeus and all that, what they teach in the US War College, or let alone in the Command and General Staff College in the Leavenworth, Kansas, is primarily narratives written by the Wehrmacht officers, which came to the United States together with a bunch of the Nazis, including Werner von Braun, the father of the American space program. And these are the guys who lost the war on the Eastern Front, who confabulated the American military history for them, because they needed to find the excuse why they got their ass handed to them by the Red Army, which ended up in Berlin in 1945. So they confabulated it for them. They wrote fighting doctrine, all those Wehrmacht generals and senior officers. And the United States was absolutely, strictly copying this whole idea without even understanding what Joint Chiefs of Staff has nothing to do with General Staff. They're not comparable. There's totally two different military structures. And the way their operation planning is done by the General Staff, because it's a joint operational planning, the United States has no culture. U.S. military has no culture of this. Absolutely, because this is all about services and who gets more money. That's it. That's the only thing they exist for. And then, of course, they pretend that the finest fighting force in history, which cannot win the freaking war against their third-rate opponents, and that's the whole thing. And when you look at these people, not to speak about this, again, Business Insider is the newspaper for wiping your butt, in the toilets, pretty much, when you run out of the toilet paper. And even that is very dangerous to getting, basically cancer, brain cancer through the anus, So because this is absolute ridiculous. These people have no self-respect. They don't have any military honor, which says, I cannot go out and lie. They cannot go out and give, for example, narration of the operational objectives. For example, like Mr. Rutskoy came out in the start of and Mr. Rutskoy is Colonel General. He's the guy who, by the way, the main operational directorate of the General Staff. These guys, it's different class altogether, okay? It's different class, and they don't understand. They would never understand what's the difference, because it's Dunning-Kruger effect. You cannot teach a fool that he's a fool because he is a fool, and this is pretty much, again, as I stated, Keen wouldn't even understand how it works, They don't teach that. They teach about how great U.S. military is. And there you go. It was shown its proper place now.
Yeah, we're learning quite, I think, starkly how the vast majority, if not 100% of the Western mainstream media at this point, Business Insider included, are, if there was a brand of toilet paper worse than one ply, that is what it is. It's incredibly painful to use, ineffectual. And one thing I will last comment on this particular topic, as the Western mainstream media, as the Institute for the Study of War, these hawkish think tanks coming from the foreign policy blob, Washington, NATO, etc., as they're talking about Russia having trouble on the front lines, the news is actually really tragic for Ukraine. And we often talk about how Ukraine is looking, and NATO, of course, is deeply into the addiction of killing everything Russian. But Ukrainians are the ones who are dying en masse. And now Ukraine, we're hearing horrific stories that have been more than confirmed in terms of older people, women, everyone's being sent out. And here's a recent report of Ukraine sending untrained conscripts straight to the front line, according to another piece of very harsh toilet paper, the U.S.-based outlet, the Daily Beast. So the U.S. mainstream media, the Western mainstream media is reporting on this. This is the dichotomy. This is the bipolar. This is the cognitive dissonance almost. It's on the one hand, Russia's having so many issues on the front line, but yet they're admitting there's so many dead Ukrainians because of this conflict they've started, because this conflict they keep pushing, that now they're sending untrained conscripts to the front.
Well, yeah, and don't forget, once the results of the Ukraine war crimes tribunals, which will be held in Donetsk and in Moscow, and is being prepared, will become available with the names of those people who initiated this, and the names of people, including the Western curators from media, Gibbelsonian media and Pentagon, CIA, what have you, MI6, they will be named. Many of them are already known. And that's the problem. And you see, that's the whole thing. Many of those people who write for, this media and those military experts, they studied the war based on the Hollywood. And it's not me. I'm not exaggerating. They did. They think that a military victory is shaped by how many kilometers you covered during the day, how much territory you captured. They don't understand what destruction of the enemy is. They love to quote Clausewitz, Sun Tzu, what have you, But the problem, as I already stated, in the end, when you look attentively how the real war is done, it's, again, I don't think so anybody of them read Svechin. Okay, Alexander Andreevich Svechin. They never heard of him. Probably most of those people. Petrel certainly never read him. So if they did, and especially if they studied, for example, World War II, real history, not the baloney which they teach in West Point, and but what is really happened and what were the ratios, and not those numbers which German generals gave them, who already settled in the United States after the World War II and Operation Paperclip, if you remember that. So they would be terrified, and they would probably learn a thing or two. The problem is they never learned anything. They are incapable of learning because it is the virus of the exceptionalism. And what happened last 2 years just absolutely destroyed this whole thing. Apart from the fact that, we know the political process, the world is not stupid. Everybody has internet nowadays. Everybody sees the news, real news, and what is coming. And it's unbelievable.
Thank you for tuning in to my latest video. I appreciate all of your support. This channel, however, needs your help. I am seeking to make this channel more sustainable in the long term and upgrade necessary equipment to ensure that this work continues onward and makes progress to give you all of the geopolitical analysis that you all deserve. For that reason, I'm asking you to become a member of my Patreon community at patreon.com/DannyDhaiphong. You can find that link in the video description or in the pinned comment below. For whatever amount you choose to give, just know you are supporting independent media that you can't find anywhere else. Thank you so much, and I look forward to the next video.